pursued is an endless vista of opportunities, but I would still say the bedrock of my life has been my family life. And, you know, it's a toss-up, I would say, between my kids and my wife. Thank God that's a toss-up. And, but I always found my home a haven away from the career, and a place I loved to be, and I loved spending time with my kids, and it didn't really matter what age they were, and that's still the case. And so, and you know, Tammy and I had 2 kids, and we didn't have our first child, Michaela, until you were 30, I think?
31.
31?
Yeah.
And, you know, we probably should have 4 kids, not 2. And, but we got married a little late. We got the show on the road a little late, not too late, because we had 2 kids, but a little later than might have been optimal.
Why do you think 30 is too late?
What's that?
Why do you think 30 is too late?
Oh, yeah, I've got another podcast coming out here right away about that. So I interviewed this gentleman who's made a documentary about involuntary childlessness, which is an epidemic that no one knows about, except he does. He's a statistician and a demographer, someone who studies population trends. And he's shown that the probability that any given 30-year-old woman who hasn't had a child will have one is 50%. Wow. Only 50%.
How about that?
So that's pretty damn dismal, but worse than that is that 90% of the women who don't have a child that will be involuntary. They'll not have a child despite wanting one. And I can tell you from my clinical experience, man, you know, I saw this with women very frequently, men too, but it really hurt the women more even. You know, women would avidly pursue their career goals, and that eats up a lot of your
About
20s, and then they
18,000
hit 30
people
or
here.
so, or 29, and then they
Just
think,
can't
oh my
see
God, you know,
It's in
I'm
the
on
arena.
career bandwagon here pretty hard. I better find myself a partner and have a child. But by 30, you know, 1 in 3 couples have fertility problems, defined as trying to conceive for a year and failing to. And so just because you decide at 29 or 30 that you're going to have kids doesn't mean you're going to have them, especially if you don't have a partner. And actually the odds are 50%. That's pretty damn dismal. And I can tell you, if you want to have a sad life, here's how to do it. Work hard at your career till you're 28. Find out it's not as fulfilling as you were led to believe. Decide that despite what you thought for 10 years and have been taught, you really want to have a child, and then be unable to have one. That is not fun. Then you can spend $250,000 on IVF treatment that doesn't work, and you know, pursue that. Sometimes it works, but it's not that likely, and it's very complex, and it can be heartbreaking, and it's extraordinarily expensive, and it puts you in the hands of the medical establishment for many, many years. And so, you know, I'm not suggesting to people that they don't pursue it if they have the means and it's necessary, but don't be thinking it's reliable, because it's not. And so it would have been better to have more kids. And so other than that, I spend a lot of time with my kids. I have a good relationship with them. I don't look back and think I wish I would have spent more time with them, even though I really did value the time we spent together. I pursued my career during that time, but I'm not guilty about that, because kids need to see that adults have important things to do. And that's because they're going to be adults, so they better think adults have important things to do. You know, for you women out there who are trying to bridge that terrible gap between family and career, and you're guilty both ways. You know, you're guilty when you're with your kids because you're not working, and then when you're working, you're guilty because you're not with your kids. And that's life for so many women. One word of consolation I might say is, it doesn't hurt your kids to see that you have a career, a job, you know, because your kids need to see that adults have important things to do, and you don't have to be at their beck and call all the time. It's not good for them. In fact, it's bad for them. You know, your kids should be as autonomous, as Tammy pointed out in her family, they should be as autonomous as they can be. Get the hell out there, you know. Come back and see me when you need to. I don't need to be hovering over you like a helicopter, like an Oedipal Medusa. Get out and do your own thing, and I'm here if you need me. But I've got some things to do. That's a good maternal attitude. You know, not rejecting, but not martyred to the children. How about that? And resentful as a consequence, and then bitter. That's a bad situation for your kids. Have a life if you're a mother. You know, it's good to see your kids see you have a life, because then they know they could be a mother, your daughter, and still have a life. That's a good thing to model. So anyways, that's what I, when I look back, it would be nice to have more kids, but we have two, and we're trying to encourage the grandchildren production. So.
What are your thoughts on Donald Trump?
Oh, this is going to be good. Oh.
I've been reading a great book about Trump here recently by Victor Davis Hanson. He's a very smart guy. And it's called The Case for Trump. And it's not like Davis Hanson is naive enough to be a, what would you say, mindless, shallow, partisan hack who's, carelessly worshiping someone he doesn't understand. Hanson's very smart. And what he was trying, sophisticated, and what he was trying to do was to account for the preposterous fact that Trump won the election against Hillary Clinton. And he does a great job of taking Hillary Clinton apart as much as she deserves to, which is a lot. And watching this from Canada, watching this election from Canada, I kept thinking, Clinton is going to hand this election to Trump. As impossible as that seems, given her extensive political history and the obvious fact that in some ways she was the shoe-in candidate, she keeps misstepping so cataclysmically that she's going to deliver the election to Trump. And then what was the capstone of that effort? It's like, well, the Democrats under Clinton clearly decided, 100% clearly, like the idiot socialists in Canada, that they were going to sacrifice the working class to the woke ideologues. And so Clinton did that, with her basket of deplorables and the notion that her inability to understand the attractiveness of Trump to the working class. She absolutely committed political suicide. And so Trump won, yeah, but not really. What Clinton did was lose devastatingly. Now, Trump did provide what you had to agree was at least an interesting alternative, because one thing you got to say about Donald Trump, he's not dull. So it's like the Americans decided, half the Americans decided, I think it's time for a bull in a china shop, personally. And they thought, well, that bull, it's like, well, it's a bull. It's in a china shop. Pretty much what we want. It's like he went rampaging around, breaking up everything. Republicans, Democrats, deep state people. Something to watch him rampage around. That's for sure. And this book by Hanson's a very good book. And I've tried to give the devil his due on the Trump front, let's say. And there's some things that man did that were quite remarkable. Here's a couple of them. He didn't get you into any stupid wars.
Woo!
And that's pretty amazing, because the first thing you might think that a bull in a china shop would do is get you into some wars, and then he didn't do that. So it's like, hey, good work, Donald, no stupid war. Like, right there, he could have got a Nobel Peace Prize for that.
Right.
I mean it, I'm serious. Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize. Like, for what? No, seriously. That was appalling. There's no way he should have accepted it. If he would have had an ounce of humility, he would have said, look, guys, thank you, but why don't you wait till I've been president for a while?
Yeah.
Because you could see
before he was
what I'm like, instead of just assuming for your woke reasons that it was time for someone like me to have Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah,
Jesus.
stupid. Didn't make no sense.
And then I was very ill for the first part of Trump's ascendancy, and so I couldn't attend as comprehensively as I hoped. But when I started to wake back up, people started to inform me about the Abraham Peace Accords, and I thought, holy crow, what the hell's going on here? This is weird. It's like peace is breaking out in the Middle East, and who's behind it? Accord with Israel, Saudi Arabia. It's like, what? Saudi Arabia is making peace with Israel? That seems utterly impossible. And so I talked to a lot of people who were involved in that process. the ambassadors from Israel to the U.S., the U.S. ambassador to Israel, a number of people who were cardinally involved in putting together the Abraham Accords. It's an amazing story, you know. The Saudis didn't sign it, but they were pushing things behind the scenes like mad. None of the Arab countries that signed the Abraham Accords with Israel did it without the say-so of the Saudis, and they were ready to sign. And if Biden wouldn't have gone out of his way to annoy the hell out of them, which he did, and also didn't deliver to you people, by the way, any fossil fuels from Saudi Arabia as a consequence, the Saudis would have signed that damn Abraham Accord. And the reason the Democrats didn't do it is because there was no goddamn way they were going to give Trump any credit for anything, especially not bringing peace to the Middle East, which is something he did. Now, it took the people who were negotiating the Abraham Accords 2 years to convince the Trump team to jump on board, and they had been trying to convince the Kerry team under Obama to do it for like 4 years before that, when it didn't get anywhere. Partly because the State Department had it as a matter of firm conviction that there was no way of advancing on the peace front in relationship to Israel without solving the Palestinian problem, and that's impossible because it's in the interests of terrible tyrannical regimes who are unbelievably anti-Semitic and anti-Israel and anti-West, for that matter, all around the world, to keep the Palestinians in a constant state of crisis in relationship to the Israelis. So that was just never going to be solved. And the people who walked through the process of the Abraham Accords just walked around the State Department. They said, we're not talking to you people at all. You've had 70 years to sort this out and haven't made one like iota of advancement. We're just going to walk around you. And in 5 months, they had the multi-country accord, and I thought that was just that was an absolute miracle. And then I was also absolutely, what would you say, shocked. I thought, like I said, I'd been sick, so I hadn't been paying attention. And when I sort of came back to consciousness, literally, I thought, peace. There's a peace treaty, but no one's reported on it. Like, it wasn't front page news on any newspapers. Like, what the hell's going on here? Because that's quite the bloody mystery as well. There should have been ticker tape parades, you know. Trump should have been given a decoration for what he did by Biden. You know, and if that would have happened, he might have faded off into the sunset, you know, with a good job, well done there, buddy, despite being a bull in the china shop. But no way, the Democrats had to keep hammering away at him, lying about Russia. Now they're going to bring him back to life, and they probably have already done that. God only knows, he might be the next president. So, and if I had to pick between Trump and a woke, ideologically ridden, what would you call intersectional theorist on the left, I'd pick Trump in 2 seconds flat. Your guy has a shot at it, eh, DeSantis? Woo! So I'd like to see him and some other Republicans really give Trump a run for his money. You know, that'd be the best outcome for everybody concerned, is to have Trump in a race where he's not merely competing against someone like Hillary Clinton, which was like shooting fish in a barrel, as it turned out, but where he's got some people. DeSantis could give him a run for his money, because DeSantis is kind of tough and ornery in the same way Trump is, and Trump hasn't had to face someone like that. Now, whether DeSantis is as ornery as Trump remains to be seen, because Trump, man, that guy's got teeth, and he's a very effective, he's a very effective witty bully, you know, that ability he has to find someone's weak point, stick a name on them, like a nickname, and to belittle them in a manner that makes them immediately embarrassed and self-effacing. Christ, he's an absolute master at that. It's quite the cataclysmic talent, and it's not to be underestimated.
No,
and
that's right.
You know, you watch people like Clinton try to out-bully Trump.
Dude,
I think you might as well just stop. You're not going to out-bully Donald Trump. And so you might stand up to him, but that takes a fair bit of finesse, and maybe DeSantis can manage it, so that'd be fun to watch. It'd be really good to see Trump enter a contest where there was real contenders, you know, so that this could be really sorted out. So if we could find out if the American public wants Trump, or if they just want someone who's strong enough and capable enough to stand up to the woke elites that seem hell-bent on destroying the country. So, you know, and there's going to be some damn interesting people in this race. So Vivek Ramaswamy, who's very young, he started a hedge fund on the New York Stock Exchange a while back called Strive. He duplicated BlackRock and Vanguard. Those are very crooked, fascist, collusionist companies in my estimation. And he's raised a tremendous amount of money doing that. And Vivek, I'm going to release the podcast with him right away, by the way. He swore, this is so cool, he swore that he would not have anyone write his speeches, that he's just going to speak spontaneously, and that he will not use a teleprompter. So Vivek has decided that as a strategy, and I think that was partly motivated by what Trump did successfully, which was to speak off the cuff, that Vivek is going to give it a shot. He's just going to say what he thinks. He's not going to turn himself over to professional political handlers. He's just going to say what he thinks and see what happens. Like he's only got an outsider's shot at the presidency, but your country's so damn bizarre, you never know who will win. Might even be Donald Trump. And so I think this is going to be one hell of a race, assuming that we don't blow ourselves up in this so-called Russia-Ukraine war, which is clearly World War III, which is clearly what we're in right now. So, you know, we could burn the whole damn game up before we get to 2024, but, you know, maybe we won't, but we might. So, Trump, yeah, well, he's quite the character, man. I've been trying to get him on my podcast. I'd love that. It'd be fun to have a straight conversation with him. And I haven't got agreement, but I also haven't been told to go directly to hell. So, you know, or something more poetic, which he's certainly capable of. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think it would be extraordinarily interesting to talk with him, and to, you know, I'd ask him too. You know, Trump is a very divisive figure, and it's a risky thing if you're a divisive figure to run for the leader of a country, because even if the divisiveness isn't justified, and certainly the radical left in particular did everything they possibly could at every step of the way to lie about Trump in every possible manner, most egregiously on the Russian collusion front, which has been shown recently to be an absolute 100% fraud. And so, you know, Trump has his reasons to believe that he was treated harshly and badly by the Washington establishment, which he certainly posed a threat to, but also by the corporate press. But he is a divisive figure, and that's a problem, because even if he's being treated unfairly, and I think that's true in many regards, the moral propriety of taking the leadership of a country when you're that divisive, well, that's something I'd like to talk to him about, because there's a problem there. It's not good to see your country divided the way it is. It's not good for your country optimally. You know, I know people have to scrap and fight and, you know, throw harsh criticisms back and forth to move ahead, but I don't think I've ever seen your country divided worse than it is now. You know, the only time in my life where it's been approximately that divided probably was around the time of Nixon. And, you know, there was a war raging in Vietnam at that point, dividing the country. But I don't think it was as divided then as it is now. You've gone through rough times before, and rough times of division, and survived without a war, excepting obviously the Civil War. So I don't think it'll come to that. I sure hope not, because that would be a catastrophe. But, and maybe the divisiveness that Trump brings about is necessary. You know, who the hell knows about these things? I don't know. But it's a risk, that's for sure. And I would say that DeSantis is likely to be a less divisive figure, although you can be sure that the radical left will do everything they can to turn him into another Trump. I don't think they're going to get away with it twice, though. So Trump was enough like Trump so that you could turn him into Trump, but I don't think DeSantis is enough like Trump so that you can turn him into Trump.
No.
So, and he's shown himself to be a capable administrator and someone with a pretty, you know, even keel and a clear head, as well as being someone who doesn't back down. So it's going to be a hell of a battle. You Americans, you're pretty damn theatrical. It's pretty fun to watch you.
Does Joe Rogan's podcast studio smell like cigars, marijuana, or both?
It's very well ventilated by necessity. I can tell you a little bit about Joe, who I really like, and who's treated me extraordinarily fairly, which I think Joe does with everyone he talks to. And Rogan is the real deal. He is exactly the way he appears to be. He's not pretentious in the least. He's extraordinarily funny. He's an extremely capable person. You know, I mean, he's had like 4 different careers, really radically different, and he's been successful in all of them. You know, to be a stand-up comedian, that's a hard thing, especially at the scale of success he's had. He had an amazing television career. He's a good fighter, and now he's like the most powerful media figure in the world. His podcast is #1 in 96 countries. There's never been someone like Rogan. I mean, it was so funny.
96.
It was so funny watching the CNN dimwits dismiss him as a fringe figure. I thought,
100 times bigger.
who's the fringe here, buddy? I said, well, you know, what Rogan does, Rogan isn't that difficult. We have hundreds of professionals here working hard on the news. It's like, so this is your theory, eh? You start a podcast, no one knows who you are. You expose your ignorance every day, which is what Joe does. You ask foolish questions. You treat your guests with respect. There's just you and your producer. You do that like 4 times a week. You do that for 7 years, and you demolish the entire legacy media apparatus while you're doing that. And that's easy. That's your theory. Yeah, it's no bloody wonder you work for CNN.
Yeah, baby! Woo!
So, yeah, Rogan's great. And, you know, I think also the way Rogan communicates has had a big effect around the world, especially on platforms like YouTube, because he's trained a whole generation of political analysts and commentators, podcast hosts, to do what Joe does, which is just to ask stupid questions. And the reason Joe asks stupid questions is because he invites people on who know things he doesn't know, and he'd like to know. And so he just asks questions, and they're real questions. You know, he doesn't pre-prepare and write down what he thinks will sound good. He doesn't write down what he thinks will make Joe sound smart. He just doesn't try to be any smarter than he is. And that's the other thing about Rogan, is that Rogan doesn't actually have to try to be any smarter than he is, because he's really smart. And I've been in rooms with Rogan, dinner, for example. I went to dinner with a bunch of the so-called IDW people, including Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin and Brett Weinstein and Sam Harris. We were all in a room in California, and it was by no means obvious that Rogan wasn't the smartest person in the room. And any room that has Shapiro in it, the contest for smartest person is a hard one to win. And because whatever you think of Shapiro, man, that guy's got a razor sharp mind, and you know, you corner Shapiro at your extreme peril. But Rogan's no slouch in the intellect department. And you know, I don't know how many bloody podcasts he's done now. It's, I think, 1,500. You know, and he's basically done 1,500 graduate level seminars. Joe Rogan's a very informed person, and 2 thumbs up to him, for him, that's for sure.